This map shows the borders of a single empire exploding outward from Macedonia. In 334 BC, communication was limited to horse speed, maps were fragmented, and travel took months. Yet in just over a decade, one force claimed territory from Greece to India. Before controlling millions of square miles, Alexander inherited a massive crisis. At 20 years old, his father, King Philip II, was suddenly assassinated. Almost overnight, the kingdom's neighbors saw an opportunity to strike. European tribes like the Thracians and surrounding Greek city-states immediately launched rebellions, assuming a teenage ruler meant the Macedonian throne was completely vulnerable. Before he could march his army across Asia, Alexander had to prove he could hold his own capital. His first required victory was crushing the doubt of his own people and the armies sitting directly at his borders. He started from the inside out. Along with his mother, Alexander orchestrated the execution of his father's new wife and her newborn child. He systematically eliminated any rival who could threaten his claim to the throne. With his internal enemies dead, he turned outward to the revolting Greek states. Ignoring the caution of his advisors, he gathered a 3,000-soldier army and marched directly on the rebellious city-state of Thebes. He bypassed a traditional field battle entirely. His troops breached the walls and burned the entire city to the ground as a calculated warning to anyone else thinking of defying him. The extreme violence worked exactly as intended. Word of the absolute destruction of Thebes spread, and the remaining Greek kingdoms instantly surrendered without opposition. By applying terrifying force, Alexander locked down his homeland. With his rear flank secure and absolute control established, he was free to point his military at the largest superpower of the ancient world, the Persian Empire. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed into Asia with roughly 40,000 soldiers. He was walking into the deeply entrenched territory of the Achaemenid Empire, a Persian force that vastly outnumbered his own. At the Battle of Granicus, a natural river barrier was defended by a larger Persian force on the opposite bank. Instead of a traditional wide advance, Alexander deployed a high-risk, wedge-shaped assault, diving straight into the water and cracking the Persian defensive line completely in half. During the chaos, Alexander rode directly into hand-to-hand combat, surviving an axe blow to the head while breaking the enemy line. This hyper-aggressive strategy peaked at Gaugamela. He aimed his forces straight at the Persian king, Darius. As you can see in the panicked expression of the Persian chariot driver in this mosaic, the intense direct assault shattered their command structure entirely, forcing Darius to abandon his army and flee the battlefield. Alexander took the Persian Empire's greatest asset, its massive size, and turned it into a liability. By concentrating overwhelming force at single points of failure, he rendered their numbers useless. After breaking the Persian army, he faced physical barriers that weapons alone couldn't solve. The city of Tyre was an island fortress surrounded by deep water, making traditional sieges impossible. Alexander's solution was brute force engineering. For 7 months, he forced his army to build a solid stone path directly through the sea. When they finally reached the walls, his exhausted and furious soldiers stormed the city and massacred 8,000 people. His reputation for unstoppable momentum did the heavy lifting for him in Egypt. Rather than fight, the population surrendered immediately. Notice how this Egyptian relief depicts him. The locals embraced him as a liberator, crowned him pharaoh, and declared him a living god. From there, he absorbed the Persian heartland. He captured cities like Babylon, a sprawling ancient capital with massive brick walls and near-endless resources, giving him a vast logistical base to supply his troops. He literally built roads through the ocean and marched over fortified mountains. Geography itself couldn't hold up against his terrifying resolve. By 327 BC, his ambition dragged his army into the Punjab region of India. Here they faced King Porus and a terrifying new reality of warfare. Look closely at this stone carving, a war elephant physically lifting a human. Alexander's men were now fighting armored giants. At the Battle of Hydaspes, Alexander secured a tactical victory, but the sheer brutality of the fight forced a rare compromise. Impressed by Porus's tactical bravery, Alexander allowed him to remain as a co-ruler under the Macedonian banner. Then, the campaign abruptly stopped. After years of continuous marching, fighting, and bleeding, his soldiers hit their limit. Exhausted, traumatized, and desperate to see their families, the Macedonian army outright refused to march any further east. Alexander could conquer rival kings, burn cities, and build bridges through the ocean. But the one obstacle he could not defeat was the psychological and biological breaking point of his own nen. Forced to turn back, Alexander began enforcing a systemic blending of cultures. In the city of Susa, he ordered 80 of his officers to marry Persian noblewomen in a mass ceremony, forcing his Greek inner circle to integrate into the Persian social structure. This push for integration, combined with Alexander wearing Persian royal robes, deeply alienated his core generals. The unity that built the empire fractured into paranoia. Alexander began executing his own officers over suspicions of corruption and spent his final days binge drinking. While planning a new invasion of Arabia from his base in Babylon, he collapsed after a night of heavy drinking. A severe fever took hold, and within 12 days, the 32-year-old king was dead. He left behind dozens of new cities, where Greek architecture and philosophy operated alongside Persian administrative systems. Hybrid kingdoms his generals would continue to rule for 3 centuries. But that ambition was a fire that burned completely out of control, eventually consuming his enemies, his friends, and finally, himself.